Hey Train, did you finish your rounds? I pulled myself from my book and nodded at my coworker Susan. Did the entire wing about 15 minutes ago. All our patients are currently slumbering or hooked into their life-extending machines, I said. No medical emergencies, no deaths, no wanderers. Oh, don't call them life-extending machines. Sounds like we're sucking their life force to fuel our batteries or something. It's ghoulish. Life-affirming machines any better? Not really, she said with a yawn. Any non-medical issues? Actually, yeah. Something cracked Marge's bathroom mirror. I swept up the glass on the floor, but be careful when you're over there. I may have missed a piece or two. Added to the list of things that Leo won't fix, Susan said, referencing the notoriously cheap owner of the place. Oh, it's okay, Marge mostly uses a bedpan anyway, Susan said. She joined me at the desk and nodded at the book in my hand. What's this week's read? A collection of Robert Bloch's short stories, I said. I'm currently reading Enoch. Who's Robert Bloch? Oh, a long-dead horror author. He wrote Psycho. Oh, I only ever saw the movie. She plopped down into her chair and rolled back a few inches. Any new patients? Not a one. Been slow if I'm being honest, I said, knocking on the wooden desk. So help me God if you jinxed us. Oh, we're good. Doc did his rounds with the hospice patients. Everyone is fine, so to speak. An orange blur came running down the hallway and leapt onto my desk. Sun-kissed, morning light assisted living center's resident cat, purred and paced on the nursing counter. I put my book down and gave him a little scratch on his head. He purred, rubbed his face against my fingers before turning away from me and jumping into Susan's lap and settling down to sleep. Traitor, I said. Oh, Sonny knows who the pack leader is at morning light. She softly petted him down his spine, his backside rising with her touch. He trilled, circled, and lay back down. Seconds later, he was asleep. Oh, how can you stay mad at this furball? He's so stinking cute. Uh-huh. Where has he been all night? Wherever he goes to avoid people during the day. He is avoiding people tonight, correct? She asked. Outside the staff, a Sun-Kiss stayed away from most people who came into the wing. But now and then, we'll find him snuggled up with a hospice patient. Without fail, a few hours later, the person dies. He doesn't do this with everyone who dies, but he's done it enough that he's established a reputation. Yeah, the Orange Reaper has the night off. What do you think he senses? I shrugged. Maybe people about to die give off a pheromone only that he can smell. Creepy, Susan said, stroking his back. Can you smell death? He raised his head and meowed and settled back down to sleep. The door to the wing opened and the swishing of overly large scrub pants rubbing against each other echoed down the hallway. Muted death metal followed. It was screaming from the earbuds of our third for the shift, Gus. Gus was young, just north of 23, and clinging to this job by the grace of God. I didn't mind him, but Susan loathed him. He walked up to the desk, plucked his earbuds out, and put them away. He pushed his long black hair behind his ears and he nodded at us. Any dead guys tonight? No, but the night's still young, I said. Doesn't that hurt your ears? What? He said before breaking into a braying laugh. Don't call the patients dead guys, Gus. We've had this talk before. Sorry. Any corpses tonight? That's somehow worse, Susan mumbled. Her pets on Sun-Kiss's back got firmer. Oh, Fleabag hasn't been stalking any doors. Oh, don't listen to him, Sonny, Susan said. He hasn't focused on anyone, but I've caught him circling George's room. That guy gives me the creeps. He's sweet, Susan said. He lost his whole family in a fire right before he came here. They had moved in to help him, she said, stopping herself. He probably doesn't even remember what happened. Maybe he was responsible, Gus said, trying to wind Susan up. It worked. Not everybody has your compassion, Gus. Some of us care about people. I care about people, but I'm not blind to the fact that some people are just, bad. Did you get that from looking in a mirror? Susan said. Gus wanted to retort, but my slight headshake stopped him, and he swallowed his response. Playing referee between these two wasn't one of my official job responsibilities, but it had become one. I didn't mind keeping the peace, but I wished that these two would remember that we were adults and didn't need to keep needling each other. Everything okay on the other side of the veil, Gus? Morning Light Assisted Living was divided into two wings. The East Wing was more of a retirement home, some medical care, but more or less the last refuge for old folks with nowhere else to go. The West Wing, though, that was where people came to die. It's quiet. Must be a Matlock marathon or something. The fogies are all cooped up, trying to solve the mystery before the man himself does. I'll take a quiet night, I said, putting down my book. Psycho ruled, Gus said, holding out his fist for a bump. I returned the favor. You guys talked to Sven at all? Gus asked. He was gone when I clocked in, I said. Oh, I hardly see him anymore since he moved to second shift, Susan said. I miss Sven. Oh, what's going on with him? He mentioned something odd, Gus said, running his hand through his hair. Said that he had heard something in the air vent by room 6. Air? Susan asked. Obviously not just air. Why would he bring it up to me if it was just air? What did he hear? I asked, playing referee again. Voices mumbling. I didn't believe him at first, but he was as serious as a tax audit. Well, did he tell you what they were saying? Said that he couldn't make it out. Passed by the vent a few times, though, and he heard something. Weird, I said. Room 6. Yeah. George is in room 6. Gus turned to Susan and nodded. Told you that he was creepy. You want to go listen? I put the bookmark in my book. Sure, I said, turning to Susan. You want to come? Oh, Sunkissed is so comfortable, she said, nodding at the dozing cat. I don't want to disturb him. It was hard to argue with her. Sunny was comfortable. Gus and I shrugged and headed down the hall to investigate the whispering air vent. When we were halfway down the hall, Gus leaned in and whispered, You think Susan likes me? I inhaled and let out a soft sigh. Susan didn't hate Gus, but he gave her fits. Gus wasn't as detail-oriented as she was, and the two clashed. Gus wasn't bright, but he also wasn't an idiot. He was skating on thin ice, and if Susan ran to the boss to report his failings, it could be the weight that would plunge him into unemployment. You guys know how to push each other's buttons, but she doesn't hate you. A bit of friendly advice, though. Just double-check the work before you say it's done. That's what drives her nuts. Oh, duh, he said. I mean, like, as a potential boyfriend. I laughed. Man, Sunkissed has a better chance of becoming president than that happening. Gus smiled. Hey, opposites attract, am I right? You guys attract like vampires in sunlight. He shrugged. It'd be a quick fling, but burning hot, he said with a smirk. You get it? Yeah, I do, I said as we stopped at the door to room 6. The air vent was above it. It gently blew out cold air, but no voices, no words, and not even a syllable. Is this it? Gus nodded. It said that he heard whispers or something. Did you hear anything? Other than the AC. I stopped. There was something there, muttering, but it wasn't coming from the vents. It was coming from inside the room. I turned to Gus, whose eyes went wide from the mumbling. "Holy shit," he whispered. I cracked open the door. A shadowy figure was standing just on the other side, mumbling something that my ears couldn't pick up. The injection of light from the hallway made the figure turn toward me. I sighed. "Grandpa George." Fun fact, George wasn't my grandpa. He was one of the several dementia patients that we had in the wing. In my time working here, I found that using grandpa or grandma when I speak to them helps them focus. There's a spark of recognition in the title that sets them at ease, so I roll with it. The confused, elderly man stood in his nightshirt, shielding his eyes with his trembling hand. Prickly silver stubble covered his face. His deep wrinkles reminded me of the gullies and folds of a mountain. His sunken eyes had that dementia dullness, a sheen of what once was but never can be again. Who is that?" "Grandpa George, it's A-Train. What are you doing up?" "A-Train?" he asked, confusion knitting his hairy caterpillar eyebrows. "Oh, my grandson." I smiled. "You got it. You gave us all a start out here. Thought that you had snuck a pretty young thing in there with you." He waved off my joke, but his grin was wide. "Oh, not today, but soon maybe." "I may know someone," Gus said from the hallway. "She loves a silver fox." "Oh, I'm not that old. I can still go all night, boy," he said, thrusting his hips. And dementia is a wild condition. People's internal wiring gets jumbled, and thoughts that may have stayed dormant in people's better years suddenly start sparking like a cut power line. I've had several patients discuss inappropriate acts or curse a blue streak to anybody nearby, or even unearth some ancient slur from the time before talkies. They can't help it. "Who were you talking to?" "What?" "Just now before we opened the door. Who were you talking to?" "Topsy." Gus and I shared a glance. "Who's Topsy?" he asked. "Oh, the little imp that lives in the air vents." "Oh." It was the only thing that trickled out of my mouth. The rest of my questions remained stuck inside my brain, slowly creating a lake of confusion. "He comes out at night," Grandpa George offered. "Oh, he's a chatty fella. Reminds me of the tiny Scarpetto, a bunkmate during my army days. Would not stop yapping during lights out. Chew your ear off every night. Or he did until he took a bullet to the eye." When dementia-addled brains randomly fire off unsettling details about past events, remain calm. If you show any discomfort in that moment, it can make the situation harder to deal with. Even in their compromised state, their lizard brains can sense a change in your demeanor. The only thing worse than a memory-leaking dementia brain is a memory-leaking dementia brain riddled with anxiety and fear. "Do you want us to scare Topsy away and let you get some shut-eye?" Gus asked. "Maybe bang on the vents or something." "Oh, no, George mumbled. "He won't like that. It doesn't like much about this place. Especially you. If you do that, he'd probably kill you." The smile left Gus's face. He took a step out of the room and back into the hallway. I turned to George. "Oh, Grandpa, that's not a nice thing to say to Gus. And Gus is good people." "Oh, Topsy said that, not me." I took a step out into the hallway. George had rattled Gus's cage. He ran his hand through his hair and tapped his foot to a song that only he could hear. "Oh, he's crazy. His brain is mush, man. He doesn't mean it." He exhaled. "Oh, it's wild to hear somebody say that so nonchalantly, you know." What's that?" Gus said, pointing at something on the ground near George's bathroom sink. I followed his finger until I settled on something reflecting at us. Gus walked into the room, pulled out his phone, and flipped on the light. He instantly recoiled, his phone clattering against the ground and cracking the screen. I walked over, forming a two-person fence to keep George from finding whatever had spooked Gus. "What is it?" I whispered. He picked up his phone, lamented the condition of the screen, and aimed the light at the source of his shock. Sitting in the middle of a pool of blood was the head of a rat. His body was nowhere to be seen. Its black glossy eyes and yellowed buck teeth reflected the light. I put my hand to my mouth to capture any words of disgust that might have come flying out at the discovery. "Oh, once we were on R&R in Pusan, we told Tiny Scarpetto that we'd give him $10 if he took a dump on a lady. We didn't think he'd actually do it," George wheezed. "Brown smear on her back. She was so mad at him that she kicked him square in the beanbag so hard that he was hospitalized for a week. Other than that, though, the girl was nice. No complaints from me." We ignored George's increasingly unhinged rambling confessions. Our attention was on the loose head on the floor near our feet. I squatted, took the phone from Gus, and I flashed the light around. "Where's the rat's body?" "Oh, maybe Tiny Scarpetto ate it." "Oh, don't say anything about Tiny," George said, wheeling around and shoving Gus. The younger man wasn't ready for the blow and stumbled forward, shooting out his arms at the last minute before he went face first into the mirror. Gus turned, ready to come to blows, but took a beat and let the anger flow out of him. "Not cool, George. I'm here to help you. No wonder Topsy wants to gut you like a fish." I stood and got in between them. I turned to George and laid a calming hand on his shoulder. His body tensed. "Hey, Grandpa, let's remain cool, okay? No need for violence," I said in a measured tone. George's shoulders relaxed. "I'm not a violent man." I turned to Gus, leaned in close, and whispered, "If you want to go back with Susan, I can handle this. George is pretty mellow." "He just threatened me." "Better than getting Tiny Scarpetto to crap on you," I said, trying to ease his mind. It worked. Gus gave me his stupid grin. "Yeah, you're right. Sorry. Head back, I got this, and I'll clean up too." "You sure?" I nodded. "And Grandpa George and I got a connection. I can handle this. If I need help, I'll yell for it." "Cool," he said, breaking into a wide grin. "I can use this opportunity to woo Susan." I blurted out a laugh, but immediately apologized. "Sorry, I just don't imagine that that'll happen. They said we couldn't land on the moon A-train, and yet there are human footprints up there right now," he said, turning to start his mission. "George." A voice called out from the vent above us. We both froze, our heads craning to the vent. The hallway light reflected off the white of an eye, but before I could get a sense of what it was, Topsy went scurrying down the vents. Something clicked against the metal as it took off. It reminded me of dog nails on a tile floor. Was that a voice or something? "Oh, Topsy's not happy," George said, tutting us. "He's an angry little thing." "Where does Topsy live?" "Oh, in the vents." "Does he come out?" "Every night." "In your room?" "Oh, everywhere. He's seen everything you all do. He doesn't like it." I said, because screaming questions at a sick elderly man wasn't good for my future employment status. We should get you back to bed. You can talk with Topsy later, okay?" George didn't argue. I helped him climb in and made sure that he was good to go. The old man was unbothered by the skittering creature in the vent. He lay his head on his pillow and closed his eyes. Seconds later, foghorn snores came rushing out of his mouth. I should have walked out, but I wanted to test something. Pretending to close the room door, I slunk back into the shadows and I waited. My heart raced and I had to remind myself to stay silent and not impatiently tap my foot. I wiped my sweaty palms against my light blue scrubs and I kept my eyes locked on the air vent. George was fast asleep by the time that the first faint clacking of those nails on the metal rose above his snoring. My eyes were glued to the vent, waiting for Topsy to reappear. The little thing got closer to the slats. I took my phone out of my pocket and I got ready to snap a photo. Seconds later, a tiny clawed foot gripped the first slat. My head flipped as if the Earth's poles had reversed. I pressed the button to snap the photo but forgot that I had the auto flash on. The light illuminated the entire room for a fleeting second, but in that time it gave Topsy enough opportunity to skitter away. I stared at the picture. It was a blur. If you squinted, you could convince yourself that there was an outline of a claw, but it wasn't clear in the slightest. I cursed under my breath and slid my phone back into my pocket. When I opened the door to leave, somebody was standing on the other side. It nearly gave me a heart attack. It was Susan. She gave one look at my bloodless face and ushered me out of the room. "What's going on? Gus said that you heard somebody in the vents." "Yeah, we did." "What did they say?" "George." "And you're sure that it came from the vents?" "It sounded like it," I said. Even weirder, George said that there's a creature named Topsy that talks to him every night and lives in the docks. "Well, George's brain is Swiss cheese at the moment," she said. "Susan, we both heard it. And look, I tried to snap a photo as it came back. It's not clear because it moved when the flash went off, but there is something there." I showed her the phone and her eyes narrowed, and her brow furrowed. She turned the phone upside down and zoomed into the ducts. Maybe it's a rat's paw, it's not really clear." "Well, we also found a rat's head in the room," Gus said. "Gross, from Sunkist." Sunkist isn't that cruel. Something else did that. Maybe another rat. They fight with each other all the time. Larry mentioned one in the kitchen the other day. But we heard a voice in the vents, and last time that I checked, rats don't talk. "Oh, Ratatouille did," she said with a faint smile. "We could have a potential Michelin star chef crawling around in there." 1, the rat's name is Remy, and 2, that was a cartoon. And 3, I'm not joking. There's something weird going on. I don't doubt it, but let's not go right to the creatures in the vents that may kill us all, like right off the bat. Let's call an exterminator first, okay? Yeah, I'm fine with that, but we should keep a closer eye on things in this wing. If there's something odd happening, we should know what it is. I don't want anything hurting these people." "The same," Susan said. "Ditto," Gus said, joining us. "Some weird shit is happening, man. Weirdo stuff. Why aren't you watching the desk like I asked?" You've got to come see what the video just caught," Gus said, pulling us back in that direction. His voice was excited and afraid in equal measure. It was as if he needed us to see what he had captured on the screen before figuring out which emotion would win. "What is it?" You just gotta come look, it's wild, man. More wild than what we just heard. That's in the ballpark." We made our way back to the nurse's desk, and Gus handed the snoozing Sunkiss to me and slid behind the bank of monitors to pull up the video. His fingers flew across the controls, beads of sweat rolling down his forehead. I didn't want to believe it at first, but I've rewatched it about a dozen times. When did this happen? Well, according to the timestamp, it just did, he said, pointing at a spot on the screen. Okay, this is the east wing near the ballroom. Watch. June will walk past that door, right? And on the screen, June did as promised. Now watch the door. Through the grainy footage on the screen, the ballroom door popped open. It slowly creaked the entire way to reveal nothing on the other side. Susan frowned. That's it. Just wait. At the bottom of the door, a tiny hand reached out from the darkness for the briefest of seconds. It clutched the door frame. A second hand joined the first. Right before this thing could dart out into the hallway, June passed by again. The thing retreated into the darkened ballroom. What the hell was that? I said. Roll it back. Gus did. We watched it several more times. My conviction grew with each replay. Susan's belief, though, it died on the vine. It's two little white dots, it could be anything. It's camera compression, probably. It was a hand, Gus said. It looked like it, I agreed. Did anybody over there witness it? Haven't asked. Well, let's change that then, Susan said, grabbing a walkie. June, are you there? A brief pause before a warm and friendly voice came back over the air. Hey, Susan, what's going on in the trenches? Oh, a typical evening over here. We were checking the cameras and we think that we may have caught something strange. Have you seen anything weird on your side of the building? Oh, I saw Butch eat a Twinkie with a Tapatio on it. Does that count? No way. Butch eats Tex-Mex Twinkies, Gus said. That's rad. Susan gave him a cockeyed look as if Gus had spoken in some other language. I raised my hand. Word of advice, if you're gonna Google that later, keep the safe search feature on. You'll thank me. It took a second for that comment to hit Gus, but once it did, he giggled like a sleep-deprived kid. This whole thing had brought out a more playful side of him. It was kind of fun to have this dude around. No, but that sounds disgusting, Susan said. The door to the ballroom apparently opened by itself. Ooh, spooky. There were also hands, Gus yelled. Hands? Did Gus say hands? Yeah, he thinks that they were hands. It might be the video quality, though. Do you want to look for us? Not really, but we're slow over here. I'll grab Butch and we'll go together. Susan turned to us. When she doesn't find a monster or whatever, let's call an exterminator and go from there. Deal. Deal, I said. What if she does find something? Susan pursed her lips and hesitated for a second. Well, we call a priest, I guess. I don't know. Well, we know that Father Karras does make house calls. I don't know who that. Susan. The walkie squawked. Susan, are you there? I'm here, June. Butch and I walked into the ballroom and it's empty. Susan turned to us and nodded. Happy? What in Sam Hill? Came Butch's distant voice over the walkie. Oh, hold on a second. Holy shit, Butch. Is that real? Is what real? Susan asked, her voice a little rushed. Oh, what the hell is that thing? Ever seen something like that? Nah, not here. But when I was a trucker, Butch started. June, don't leave us in suspense, girl. Susan interjected, forcing a laugh. What's going on? It's... June started, but that's all that we got. The red power light on our walkie-talkie winked out. Susan gripped the dial and spun it on and off, hoping to power it back on. It didn't work. The walkie was dead, and she turned to Gus. Weren't you supposed to charge these? I did, he snapped. I even signed off on the chore list thing if you don't believe me. Look, I get that you don't like me or whatever, but you can't blame me for every bad thing that happens here. Guys, I said. I'm just playing the averages, and most of the time the culprit is you. Guys, I said, my voice rising. I know you're the one running off to the boss every other day, filling them up with stories about me, trying to get me fired. Susan laughed. I'm not saying shit to the bosses. The fact that you're accusing me of that proves you don't know a thing about me. I hate snitches. Then how did they know about the Doris thing last week? The only two people in on that day were you and me. We both agreed it was an accident, and lo and behold, I get called in and talked to about it. I swear that I didn't say a word. It was an accident. Work is hard enough without worrying about dozens of eyes on you at all times. If you're feeling the heat from management, you're doing that all on your own. Guys, I yelled. That cut through the noise. They both shut up and broke eye contact. This shift was grinding all of us down to the knob. I sighed, ran my fingers through my hair, and collected my thoughts. We need to keep it cool, okay? We're all on the same team. Let's just dial it down some, okay? Sorry, Gus said. Same. I picked up the walkie. This thing was charged, but it's older than Jesus. Might have just died. We are in a place where things die. People, Susan corrected. People die, they aren't things. Gus was gearing up to respond, but I held up my hands to play referee. Okay, look, there's no reason that we need to freak out. Everything can be explained. We just have to find an explanation, that's all. Now, why don't? The door to the wing opened, shocking all of us. We relaxed when June and Butch came walking in. Butch was clutching something with two glowing red lights that reminded me of the pig's eyes from the Amityville horror. Susan lit up when June walked in. Girl, what the hell, you left me hanging. Our walkie died, Susan said. What's going on? Was it a ghost? No, but it saw us, Butch said, placing the thing in his hand on the table. It was a small cube with a camera lens. The two lights were labeled recording and power. The name Work Eye was embossed in the plastic casing. Tattlers, Butch said. If we found it in the ballroom, then you know those sons of a put them everywhere. It ain't right. Can you believe this? June said, grabbing a pad of paper and a pen and jotting down the phrase, we need to unionize. Susan quickly covered up the shared sentiment with a logbook, just in case somebody is watching in here too. Oh, guarantee it, boss, Butch said. I hate this nanny state shit. They did this behind our backs. Did you see any ghosts or anything? No, possibly a rat in the vents. I'm afraid that we've got a nest nearby. No money for rat poison, but gobs of it for spy tech. I hate this place, man, Butch said. I nodded down at the camera. Easy, Butch, and this is still. God dang it, Butch said, dropping to the ground and clutching his ankle. Blood seeped through the gaps in his fingers. What happened? June said, concerned. I must have caught it on the edge of the desk, he said, standing straight. There was a jagged gash along the side of his ankle. Another inch and it would have gouged his Achilles tendon. Oh, holy hell, that hurts. Yeah, that looks deep, June said. Let's get you back over to the medical side and see if that needs a stitch or two. I'm probably gonna dock my pay for using their supplies, Butch said with a smile. Y'all keep your heads on a swivel and hammer that edge flat. June tapped the logbook. We'll have lunch soon, huh? Talk strategy. Absolutely. Butch wrapped his arm around June's shoulder and the two of them hobbled back to the other side of the facility. As they left, and Gus stared at the little work eye camera that they had left. He took it in his hands, found the power, and shut it off. The red eyes faded to black. This is pretty messed up, huh? Susan removed the logbook and nodded down. I agree, she said, eyeing Gus. I told you that I wasn't the one saying shit. Sorry, he said. And I also said that wasn't a ghost in the ballroom. I'm 2 for 2, gentlemen. That earns me a break during the next time we have to do our rounds. Yeah, Gus said. I glanced down at the side of the desk where Butch had sliced his ankle. Maybe the metal corner had worn away and was sticking out, but nothing was out of place. I ran my finger over the metal edge. Maybe it was sharper than it looked. But running the tips of fingers over the edge confirmed that it was as sharp as a kickball. Butch couldn't have cut it on that. As I was running through scenarios, the overhead lights flickered. We glanced at the buzzing fluorescents, praying that they would stay lit. They blinked again, off longer this time. With a final shuddering rattle, the power in the building winked out. Darkness came faster than death. There are no windows in this wing, so the night swallowed us whole. I fumbled for my phone and switched on the flashlight. Susan and Gus did the same. Our 3 beams were a weak counter to the enveloping darkness. "Why isn't the generator kicked on?" Gus asked. Maybe there's a delay," I offered. "Or maybe Leo hasn't serviced them recently." "We have patience on machines," Susan said, her voice rising. "If the power stays off, they're going to." "Gus, you and Susan go check on the patients. I'll go see what's up with the generators. Maybe something's tripped in there and they needed to be restarted manually," I said. "Oh, this is just like Jurassic Park," Gus said, "minus the dinosaurs." "So nothing like Jurassic Park then," Susan jabbed. "I was talking about the generator thing," Gus said, turning to me. "You got me right." "I gotcha," I said. Sunkist, who had been dozing seconds earlier, snapped awake. He leapt off the chair, sending it spinning like a top. He hit the ground in a full sprint into the dark of the hallway, his footfalls growing quieter as he disappeared from our sight. "What was that all about?" Susan asked. "Oh, Kat's here 4 times better than we do," I said, my mind flashing to the thing in George's air vents. "Maybe he heard a rat. Or Topsy's on the loose," Gus said, blurting out my growing unease. He chuckled to himself. "Hold on to your butts." I swallowed hard. "God dang it, Gus. Okay, let's go." We set off on our tasks. Gus and Susan took opposite sides of the hall and checked on all our patients. I jogged down the middle of the hallway, heading toward the generator room and dreading each step. George's room was fast approaching, and an icy chill ran down my back that had nothing to do with conditioned air. I half expected to hear that raspy voice call out for me, but I strode past without incident. Thank God for small miracles. But that miracle ended as fast as it had arrived. Susan yelped from inside room 3. I halted my trip to the generators and I jogged back to join her. Mona, a lovely older woman winding down the clock with us, was dozing without a care in the world. Susan had pressed herself against the wall. The light from her phone splayed out in front of her, only showing the tips of her nursemaid shoes. But her kicks weren't the main event. To our shared disgust and horror, we spied a headless rat's rotund and leaking body splayed out in front of us. Its stomach split down the main line. Its glistening innards clashed against the bright white tiles. Below the corpse, somebody had scrawled a ghastly message in dried blood. "I am here." And the light on the floor started bouncing because Susan's hand was shaking. She turned to me, her face the same color as the tile, and tried to speak. Her lips moved, but the words stayed lodged in her throat. I leaned into her. "Oh, it's probably a prank or something." "The hell it is," she whispered back. "This is some serial killer shit, A-Train." It was some serial killer shit, but I couldn't agree with Susan at the moment. If I did, I would lose her. I needed a rational mind to help ground us. Left to our own devices, Gus and I would assume this was the work of a witch or something. "Mona looks okay. Dip out of here and head back to the desk," When I get the power back on, let's call the janitors to clean this up. Are their mops going to protect me from a killer's knife? You ever seen Mark wield that mop? He's deadly, I said, trying to lower the temperature. Her weak smile told me that I may not have hit the mark, but I was in the neighborhood. Head back to the front desk. After I get the generators going, I'll finish checking the rooms, okay? Okay, she said before adding a heartfelt, thanks. As I said, we're all on the same team, right? An ear-splitting meow came from the hallway. Sunkissed wanted something. I shook my head. Sunkissed agrees. She let out an uneasy laugh. And go see what he needs before he claws up the doors and Leo tells us to get rid of him. I left her and walked back out into the hallway. Sunkissed was pacing in front of the door to the generator room. His meows echoed down the hall. I flashed my light on him and he glanced at me. His sparkling eyes pleaded to be let in. I pulled up my keys to unlock the door and stopped. Something was skittering around in there. I pressed my ear to the cool metal door, shut my eyes, and focused. Whatever was in there was moving with purpose, on the hunt for some unknown treasure. Topsy's in there. I jumped out of my skin and wheeled around, ready to punch whoever had snuck up behind me. I held my punch, and though when George's sleepy half-smile found me, he stood there in his stockinged feet and disheveled hair without a care in the world. Christ on a bike, Grandpa George. What are you doing out of bed? Oh, Topsy told me you were here. Are you trying to stop him? I'm trying to turn the power on, I said, turning the key and handle. Why are you out of bed? Topsy said he was gonna finally do it tonight. Holy shit, George is missing, Gus yelled. He's with me, I yelled back, pushing open the door. You should head back. Sunkissed darted into the room as soon as it was wide enough for him to slip in. Seconds later, he was hissing, yowling, and growling. Whatever he had encountered wasn't pleased to see Sunny either. The screeching reached a Beatles mania pitch, and the brawl began. I left George standing there, pushed the door open, and brought the beam of light around. Sunkissed was rolling around on the ground in combat with something. His paws sank into the flank of his victim. The thing fought tooth and nail to avoid becoming Sunkissed, latest snack. I couldn't get a clear glimpse of what he was brawling with, but my brain filled in the blank with a rat. But I never saw a tail. Sunkissed yowled in pain, dropped his victim, and went running out of the room at speeds that would have sent a DeLorean back to the 50s. Instead of twin flaming trails, there were drops of ruby-red blood that followed him out of the room. I glanced back at where he was fighting, but it scrambled away before I could get a beat on it. Questions filled my head, but I pushed them aside and ran to flip on the generators. I had delayed long enough. I ripped open the electrical panel, eyed the emergency switch, and reached out to flip it on. Before I did, though, the power flickered. We had a heartbeat. Half of the overhead bulbs hummed to life, not fully illuminated, but enough to flood the darkness with a dull light. Oh God, no! Susan screamed from the hallway, her sobs quickly followed. And before I could run to her screams, sneakers squeaking on tiles came sprinting down the hallway. Gus came skidding to a stop. He was flushed and out of breath. Sunkissed, he's dead, George said with a cackle. Dead as a doornail. What? Something stabbed him, Gus said. He's got little cuts all over his body. Oh, Topsy got him. Said he'd start with the cat and go from there. Jesus, George, Gus said, disgusted. Come on, let's get you back to your room. He put his hand on George's shoulder to guide him out, but George pulled away from his grip. Oh, don't touch me. If Topsy sees you touching me. He trailed off into more cackling. Gus shot me a look. His eyes were wide and the blood had retreated from his face. The kid was a lot of things, but scared wasn't one of them. Something about George's demeanor was setting his teeth on edge. "Grandpa George, don't be mean to Gus. He only wants to help." There was a clattering above us, and Gus and I both turned our attention to the air vents. George started laughing again, but these weren't the typical friendly Grandpa George chuckles. These were the laughs of a con man laughing in the face of his victims, taking perverse joy from the knowledge that they didn't understand they were being played. "Rats, right?" Gus said. "Rats," I agreed. "Oh, Topsy cleared out the rats," George said. "How?" George went stock still, his body rigid. He closed his eyes and let his head low back. I was afraid that he had passed out and was about to fall onto the floor. If he smacked his head on the hard tile, before I could move to stop him, he snapped his head back, stared a hole through my soul, and grinned. "Topsy's gonna clean up all your messes." "Grandpa George, what the hell are you talking about? I want to help you, but you're not making sense here." He shuffled his safety stocking-covered feet. "Topsy's the only help I need." More unsettling laughter escaped his mouth. "Well, until Topsy gets a W-2, he's not in the chain of command," I said, trying to turn into the spin and straighten out the evening. "Now come on, it's been a weird night. Let's get you back to your room." George shook his head no and took off running out of the room. His unexpected burst of energy and speed caught us all off guard. Gus went to chase after him and was gone before I could take my first step. When I did eventually, my foot caught on Sonny's blood. My legs went out in front of me and I fell hard on my tailbone. Waves of pain radiated up my spine and spider-webbed out to my limbs. My hand instantly grabbed the spot and rubbed, hoping that mere friction would bring the relief that only pain drugs could. As I spun around from my back to my knees to stand up, my eyes caught tiny footprints in the blood. It wasn't a rat's foot, 7 toes up front and 2 in the back. The first and 7th toe were twice as long as the others. The backs ended in a point, which I had to assume meant a long, sharp nail. The distance between the steps told me that this was the gait of something on 2 legs and not 4. It couldn't have been a rat. The tracks disappeared behind the generators. I followed them and stopped cold. On the ground was a tiny homemade knife, nothing more than a shard of broken glass wrapped in an old shoelace. Sun-kissed blood stained the tip. What the hell? I followed the footprints. They went up the wall and ended at the wrenched open air vent. My stomach flipped and my mouth went dry. Gus came skidding back into view. It snapped me out of my daze. "Is George back in his room?" "I don't know," Gus said. "I can't find him anywhere in this wing." "Is Susan okay?" He shook his head. Sun-kissed being hurt grabbed all her attention. "He's still alive. She took him to the 24-hour vet down the street." "She left us?" "I can't blame her. She's spooked and Sun-kissed is one of us, man. You and I would have done the same." I wanted to be mad at her for abandoning us, but Gus was right. Sonny was a teammate and needed help. But still, my hands balled into fists, the tips of my nails carving crescent moons into my palms. "What the hell are those footprints?" Gus said, walking past me and over to the wall, his voice rising as he asked again, "What are these, A-Train?" I got no idea. "Topsy, are we gonna entertain the ramblings of a man with a melting brain?" "Hey, melting or not, none of this shit makes any rational sense, dude. I'm willing to believe the impossible." I didn't have a response. Gus was right. When rationality exits the stage, then what's left? "Okay, fine. Topsy is real. Let's get some facts. What the hell is it?" Gus laughed. "Facts? Okay. Maybe it's a demon, an imp, a djinn. Man, I don't know. Where did he come from? Maybe he was spiritually bonded with a former patient. We've had all kinds of weirdos come through here. Would it really be shocking if one of them had bonded with a monster? Might explain some of the weird, random shit that happens around here. The host dies and then Topsy just hides in the air vents. Why? Gus threw up his hands. Man, I don't know, maybe he's waiting for someone to kill. Maybe he loves air vents, maybe he wants to weekend at Bernie, one of our fogies. I'm just throwing shit at the wall. Nursing school never covered patient monster pairing. A blur ran past the door. George. The old man shouldn't be able to walk that fast. His body was failing him and his number was ready to be called by the Reaper. But here he was, putting Jesse Owens to shame in our hallway. The galloping geezer made my brain snap into action. And Topsy's gotta be controlling George, right? I mean, that man needs help to drop a deuce, and now we should carry Richardson. That doesn't make sense unless he really is possessed, Gus said. Holy crap. The shrill bleating of medical machine alarms came screaming from the open door. Someone's IV lines had been disconnected, or worse, somebody was in danger of dying. I turned to Gus, but he was already breaking out of the door toward the source of the noise. Marge's room. And Gus skidded to a stop once his eyes found the message scrawled on the floor. Well, that's ominous. Putting his fear aside, he snapped into action. Somebody had tampered with her IV line. They had become occluded, keeping her from getting the meds that she needed. I turned on my phone to give Gus some light as he went about fixing Marge's lines. Her breathing was steady, but her heart rate had lowered. We were in a race against time. Feet slapping against the tile outside the room made me turn. George stood just outside the door, his white hair slicked with sweat, his chest rising and falling with each labored breath. He looked pale, more so than usual. Grandpa George? His body went as rigid as a plank of wood. His ancient eyes opened as wide as his sagging skin would allow. The upturned smile on his face deepened the already Grand Canyon wrinkles on his cheeks and forehead. You can't save them all, he said in a voice that wasn't his own. And you can't stop me now. He rocked back on his heels and his legs gave out. George collapsed to the ground, his head bouncing off the tile with a gut-churning crack. Blood pooled around his head. A bright blue smoke rose from his body, forming the number 85 before dissipating completely. There was a splash in the pooling blood. I took a step in George's direction to render aid, but froze when those 7-toed footprints appeared out of thin air on the tile in front of me. They trapezed through the blood, leaving a trail into Marge's room with us. I lost sight of them in the dark. Got it, Gus said, slamming the IV stand door closed. She's good too. The mechanical alarm stopped just as Gus's screams began. He dropped from sight, hollering that something had stabbed him. I ran to him and yanked him to his feet. Several new puncture marks marred the bottom of his scrubs. A blooming red stain grew on the blue fabric. You little, Gus said, using me as a crutch and kicking at the air near his feet. His boot caught the unseen Topsy because the force of the blow sent its invisible body crashing into the toilet. Water splashed all over the ground. In the low light and spilling water, I just made out the outline of a tiny creature no larger than sun-kissed. I let go of Gus, ran over to the door, and I slammed it shut. Topsy flung itself against the door, but it was too late. I had trapped him. It slammed into the wood, snarled, and started stabbing it with whatever blade he had used to dice up Gus's pincushion leg. I grabbed a chair, slid it under the handle, and turned to him. How bad? I can move, but I wouldn't wager any money on me winning any races, he said, nodding at the door. Is that gonna hold? For now, maybe. He glanced out and found George's body. He nodded, shuffled to the chair, and I rushed over to check for a pulse. There wasn't one. And Grandpa George had run his last hallway marathon. And Topsy was throwing its body at the door. Each time it made contact, the door shook. I was worried that it would come tumbling down. My mind was swimming in deep water and there was no sign of shore. "Hello?" A strange voice from above. For a moment I assumed it was God because who else would it be? But the voice called out again and I traced its origin not to heaven but to the air vent. "I can see you in the room, A-Train." It wasn't God. It was my boss and the owner of the facility, Leo. Quite a major step down from assuming that I was about to chat with the creator of all things. What the hell? Right track but wrong train. Is Topsy alive? On cue, the little monster flung itself against the wall. Leo sighed. "Wonderful, what number do you see?" "What?" "No, when George expired, what number?" 85, I said. "Oh, we're ahead of schedule," he said with what I can only describe as perverse glee. "Whatever you do, don't touch a thing and I'll be there in 10 minutes to help." "Where are you calling me from?" I asked. "Oh, you found one earlier. I got a notification when you turned it off." The camera that Butch found. "Topsy, I know you can hear me. Our agreement did not include my employees. Head back into the vents, I'll be there shortly." Topsy started throwing itself against the door. Seconds later, Topsy violently yanked the bathroom air vent off the wall and tossed it to the ground with a clang. The pitter-patter of feet in the vents above us had us both ducking out of instinct. Topsy had returned to its home. "Oh, it won't bother you now, just don't touch anything. I'll be there shortly." "What the hell is going on?" Gus yelled. Leo never responded. We were in the dark in every way a person could be. Down the hall, there was a loud bang and then another, until the hum of an engine coming to life rattled our brains. The generators had finally caught and started spinning. The overhead lights buzzed to life, showing us all the horrid details in Marge's room that we had missed in the dark. I didn't envy what Mark was going to have to clean up later. We were in stasis until Leo arrived. I glanced at Gus. He winced in pain. The bloom on his scrubs was growing. Let's clean out those wounds and get him wrapped. 10 minutes later, the doors to the wing swung open. Leo was standing there, flanked by two men dressed in all black, their faces obscured by medical masks. The two men went to tend to George's body, completely ignoring us. Leo didn't, though. "Where's Susan and Sunkist?" "At the vet," Gus spat. "I told Topsy 100 times to leave that cat alone," he said, shaking his head. "I'll remind him." The two assistants laid out a stiff black body bag and unzipped it. The scent of new plastic wafted toward us. Without hesitation or disgust, they slid George's battered body into the bag. "Poor George," Leo said. "So bright when he first arrived here. His spark dimmed so quickly." "Are you serious with this soliloquy shit?" Gus snapped. The kid rarely got angry, but this ordeal had tapped into the source, and the rage was coming out through his pores. "What is going on here? 10 minutes ago, some ghoul was killing patients and threatening us, and now you're here and it's singing Kumbaya in the air vents. What gives?" I raised a hand again, still playing referee. "We have a right to know what's going on." "You have a right to a paycheck and little else," Leo said. Gus was ready to punch him and Leo sensed the charge in the air. "But perhaps a little insight is in order. I'll tell you what I can." "What is Topsy?" Gus spat. "Oh, technically you could call him an imp, but that's only half of it. Even though they can be hard to control, I consider him an invaluable aid in a quest that I must finish." "Quest?" He sighed. "A century ago, my relatives were in dire straits. They stood to lose everything my family had earned since arriving on these shores. We had fought hard for what we had and we didn't want to lose it. To reverse course, they reached out to somebody who could help. But like all help, it came with strings." "Oh, just spit it out," Gus said, his hands balling up. "Enough poetry." My family line would be secure indefinitely in exchange for my help in rounding up souls and escorting them to parts south of here. The silence was deafening. Gus and I shared a glance before he started nervously laughing. You're trying to tell me you're in the soul harvesting business? I am. 100 a year every year until I die. It's why I opened an assisted living facility. The nearly dead come to me. I don't have to waste all my time chasing them down anymore. It's a game changer in terms of saving time and effort. How? Well, the people that are in this wing are, let's say, suggestible. Topsy and I chat up the mush-brained folks, get them to agree to our arrangement, and I hit my yearly goal. Jesus Christ, that's evil. Leo chuckled. It's business, and it's often unsavory. Successful ones are anyway. How do you sleep at night? We're here to take care of these people. Are they not taken care of? I have cameras all over, and every day I watch you all doing a wonderful job caring for these people. These people, I will remind you, whose families left them to rot. Am I wrong to take in trash and turn it into something valuable? Am I wrong for streamlining this process? The two men in black came back and muttered something into Leo's ear. He nodded and they took off down the hall to do God knows what. Leo chuckled and shook his head. Oh, those two are such characters, but great at cleaning up Topsy's messes. Gus stood, winced, but walked down the door to the east wing. I'm done, man. You can take this job and cram it up Topsy's 5 butts. I'm gonna tell everybody about this place. Leo laughed at this. It was so unexpected that Gus froze in place. Nobody's gonna believe you. You sound insane. All of it would take would be for someone to dig into your employee file and discover that you're nothing more than a disgruntled ex-employee with an axe to grind. I know a lot of people. I'd find someone to believe me, Gus said, putting his hand on the door. Unless, of course, Topsy finds you first. Gus turned, his face ashen. The weight of the threat hit him like a bolt from on high. I'm not a heartless man, Leo said. I understand that this job is difficult, and doubly so now that you're in on the scheme. Let's say you both get a $15,000 bump in pay. Would that help everybody move past this unpleasantness? All the moisture in my mouth vaporized. Without realizing it, Gus, Susan, and I had waltzed into a bear trap. We were stuck here. We had become cogs in an infernal machine. My stomach roiled and I chewed back the vomit that was rising in my throat. Gentlemen, you're not the first employees to figure this out, and doubtful you'll be the last. Hell, Sven figured it out and now he's got the shift that he desired. Play ball, huh, and it's just easier for everyone. We didn't respond and Leo took that as an agreement. He smiled, walked to the desk, and tapped at the paper with June's unionization message. Oh, and by the way, if this kind of talk continues, I'll send Topsy to negotiate terms. With that, he walked out of the room. Gus, dazed, shuffled back over to the desk. He slumped into a chair and put his head in his hands. If he had something to say, the words got lost in the maze of emotion. Hello, a soft voice said. It was Marge, and she was out of bed and hauling a rolling IV stand with her. She was half awake, but to be fair, she's always had that gaze these days. Dementia was eating her brain whole. Somebody was calling my name from the air vents. Gus sighed and stood. It was probably nothing, he said. The words barely audible, as if his mouth was too ashamed to claim them. Let's get you back to bed, huh?